Okay.
Okay, and then should I just start us off
It should be
again?
popping up. Let's give it a second to like start. I don't know.
Yeah, you're live.
Yeah. Should be live there. And then I'm gonna start recording as well.
I can keep if anybody does join,
Yeah, keep an eye on the chat.
I'll post on our Twitter too.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat as well. Okay, dude. Utah versus Florida. Guys, it's so nice to get a win.
1-0.
It's actually
1-0.
Dude, I couldn't sleep last night. I was so nervous for this game. And we came out first play of the game throwing for a touchdown. Nothing feels better than that.
Yeah, I agree. Just way better than I could have predicted. If you would have told me 24-11 this morning, I would have taken that in a heartbeat.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, dude, we finally got that Power 5 out of conference win.
I know it was awesome to kind of get that off our chest, and now we gotta go to Baylor next week and get that road win as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Landon, let's move to the stats.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that a little bit. What sticks out to you guys? What sticks out to you, Connor?
Well, I think obviously the rushing yards.
Yeah.
Coming into this game, Montrell Johnson, ETN, both standout backs. I think quietly, in my opinion, they have a top 10 room in the nation, just in my opinion. At least that's what it seemed like. They were decently productive last year. And 13 rushing yards. Like,
That's
nothing.
insane.
I thought that Utah didn't run the ball super well, but in comparison to that, and obviously it's because, I think Mertz probably averaged like -3 yards a rush just because he got sacked so many times. But yeah, really, really impressed with Utah's ability to stop the run, and kind of surprised that Florida wasn't able to establish the run.
Yeah, I think we all underestimated like how much the inexperience on that offensive line was really going to kill Florida. Because you just see the sizes of those players. You just see how physically massive they are. And you're like, oh, they'll be fine blocking. Like, they're such big guys. They're going to be strong. They're going to move people. But, like, experience really does matter. And, like, that, like, killed them today.
You saw it many times. They had small little holding penalties off false starts that really, really hurt Florida, especially in the red zone. It was not a well-coached offensive line today. Obviously, again, I think every single person on Florida's offensive line tonight, like, was their first start of their career. So that really does hurt them. You really saw it throughout the game.
Yeah, they really shot themselves in the foot with penalties, especially the one that comes to mind that was a pretty critical penalty in terms of momentum, was that 4th and 1 in the red zone. They were going to go for it, potentially get it. False start right there, goes to a 4th and 6. They kick a field goal. Their kicker shanks it right. That's a big play right there. And the inexperience, you can recruit as good as Billy Napier's recruiting, but without the experience and the coaching, a lot of that talent's not going to be realized immediately.
Yeah, 100%. I think another penalty that really stands out is when Utah literally punted the ball and the special teams unit had 2 number 3s on the field, and it gave the ball back. Was just soul crushing for
that
the
was
Florida unit
brutal.
trying to get off the field. Horrible for that defense that got to stop and then had to come back onto the field. So yeah, Florida's they just inexperienced in a hostile environment. So many false starts, so many penalties. Totally shot themselves in the foot with all the penalties.
Yeah, like, this is just such a weird game because Florida literally hasn't come out west in like 30 years or more. They really haven't had an out-of-conference game out of Florida in so long. And I think you could tell it was a little weird for them. Usually they're traveling, their plane ride is an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at the most. But this is a, 6-hour plane ride from Florida. They had to stop in Dallas, they had to come to Salt Lake, and I think they were pretty unprepared for how raucous the environment was going to be.
I agree with you. It's really weird to say, but I had a weird feeling that they had become like a Pac-12 team almost when we were playing them. I don't know. In like a weird way, it felt like having to travel out of the South, having to travel out of SEC country. It kind of took away some of that mystique of an SEC team, SEC program.
Yeah.
If you guys kind of get what I'm saying there.
I think it just shows like how sheltered all of those programs are. Like they almost never play anyone difficult out of
Exactly.
conference. They have 8 conference games, like they all have inflated win totals because the schedules, right?
Yeah.
Well, you saw that SEC powerhouse on the edges with their speed is like once you get out of that front seven, they were fast. That really kind of hurt Utah, especially in the rushing and passing game this on their defensive side. But when it came down to it, Utah just had enough grit, had enough force on the line of scrimmages to really kind of make it difficult for Florida. And you see it in the rushing yards for Florida. It is crazy. We're probably going to talk about it so much, but it is insane for them to average 0.6 yards per carry.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Especially like Connor talked about with those 2 premier backs in the backfield and a big, presumably very well talented offensive line. It just wasn't expected whatsoever.
Yeah. So let's talk about what maybe was one of the key, it was the key thing coming into the game, which is the quarterbacks. Graham Mertz throwing for 333 yards was very unexpected for me. I thought they would be way more run heavy. Utah passed for 165 yards. I mean, a lot of that was that very first play, 70-yard strike to Money Parks, which was incredible. What did you guys think of the quarterback situation today?
That was really interesting because they had to lean on the quarterback, which was very strange. We took the runaway in the first quarter, to be completely honest. They couldn't move the ball on the ground, and that forced them to pass. And they actually did something really interesting in that second half when their offense started rolling a little bit more. They took a tight end out or took an extra wide receiver out, and they just played with more linemen because they needed time to pass. The pass rush was getting home constantly. So I think that's something that was really interesting in the passing game, I think.
And it was a lot of quick slants, screen passes that allowed their athletic, quick receivers and skill position players to make a play. And sometimes it was effective, sometimes it wasn't. Just shout out to Utah's DBs and middle linebackers. They really held their own when it came down to it because they tackled probably the best we've seen them in the start of season in a very long time.
Yeah. Connor, what did you think about the split between Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson?
Well, I think when the game started and they started, switching out, not even every drive, on drives, every play, I was a little worried just because quarterbacks tend to need that flow state that they get in when they're driving their team down the field. So I was a little worried that, Witt may have made them a little bit more one-dimensional, and maybe that's what caused them to lose their rhythm a little bit in the second half. We don't really know, but I like the approach. Once we got up a little bit in points, I really enjoyed Nate Johnson. I think that obviously he had some miscues early in the game, but and late in the game too. But I think it was important for him to get real snaps in against a real team in a real game, just because I think he's the future at Utah, in my opinion, or one of the futures that we have at our disposal. And for him to get in-game snaps and for him to score and for him to play as well as he did, I thought was really impressive. And huge shout out to Barnes too. I totally underestimated him coming into this game, coming off that Penn State Rose Bowl loss. I was really down on him. Didn't think he was going to do anything. And he really surpassed my expectations. So I thought both of them did a great job with the situation they were handed.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It was really weird because I do see a little bit of that, they didn't get into the flow because we were switching them out a little bit. I think that was a little bit of a factor in only our 270 yards, but it was so strange because I feel like we got nearly all of our 105 rushing yards when Johnson was in the game, and we got nearly all of our 165 passing yards when Bryson was in the game. It's like Bryson went in, we couldn't run the ball. Nate went in, we couldn't pass the ball, which, ideally you'd have Rising where you could do both. But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Nate didn't have very many chances to show off the passing. If I remember correctly, he only had one pass play that had a couple short routes, like a 5-yarder he went for. Then that one screen play on 3rd and long. And then he had the one play as well that he ran in for a touchdown that I think had a pass option with it. I don't know. I'd like to see what Nate can do in the passing game a little bit more, especially if we're able to get up a couple scores. Because he did have that one attempted pass where the ball slipped out of his hands and it almost was a turnover. But, I mean, there's a big difference between almost a turnover and actually turning the ball over. So he was able to recover that, which is awesome. I'd really like to see, if Nate can develop that passing ability, because he was so dynamic running, like we all knew he was. He was such a problem. Even for a fast Florida SEC defense, he was still burning them on the edge with speed. Imagine translating that to a team with less talent and worse athletes, like a team like Baylor or a lot of the Pac teams we're going to be playing. Dude, he is going to be a problem if we can learn to use him correctly.
I really liked how both Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson protected the ball today. I think that was like one of my biggest keys. If Utah lost the turnover battle, they're going to lose this game. It was simple as that to me. And Utah, with that one interception, they were able to win that turnover battle. And
so let's move on to the keys of the game if we're going into this right now.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So like Ethan was talking about, win the turnover battle. Keep going, E.
Yeah, like we talked about this earlier in one of our videos, and we kind of don't want to toot our own horn, but we kind of hit every point perfectly. Utah, if they
These
won
were
that
some
turnover
nice
battle,
keys to the game, dude.
Yeah, we freaking nailed it.
This was nice.
This was what we predicted before the game, and I mean, I think you can see everything like came to pass, you know.
And it's crazy to me that Utah was able to hit all those points and Florida wasn't. And it shows you how key it was to be able to do those things.
Yeah, I will say though, I want to give a shout out to Graham Mertz. Did not expect him to play as well as he did. Threw for over 300 yards, averaged 8 yards a play with one interception. That wasn't. I mean, it was kind of his fault, but it was
like
balled by a
50-50.
receiver, right? That Ricky Pearsall connection was special. I think Pearsall almost hit 100 yards. They did not protect Mertz though. I think Utah had 5 sacks in this game. And so,
And
yeah,
a lot
I
of
think
pressures too.
Absolutely, yeah. They made Mertz uncomfortable with, which I think ultimately led to the Florida offense kind of sputtering out towards the end of things.
Yeah, when they brought in that 6th offensive lineman, they couldn't get pressure, and Grant Mertz was able to bring Florida down the field and kind of dice Utah's defense. But as soon as he got that pressure, he kind of had a little bit of his hands were a little slippery, and he wasn't creating those plays as well as he was previously.
Yeah, honestly, I think that Mertz was one of their best players in this game. Like he
100%.
way surpassed my expectations. I think their best unit was probably the defensive line. They held their own, and honestly, they destroyed us in run. We could not run on that defensive line. They were just too big. They were too physical. We had to go outside. You know, Nate Johnson's all of his runs were to the outside. But Mertz, honestly, probably the second best player besides that defensive line unit. I really thought he showed himself well. I thought he was composed, you know, when he needed to pass more. I honestly thought he did great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the keys to the game at Utah, looking at it, limit big plays we had on there. I think Utah did a very good job of that tonight. They had a few gash plays, but that's just football. That's going to happen. There weren't any 70-yard touchdowns. There weren't any, we should have tackled him in the backfield, but he broke a tackle and ran for 60 yards. Nothing like that happened. We really limited the explosiveness of Florida. When they scored, we made them work for it. We made them work for every play of it.
Yeah, how many plays over like 20 yards did they have? Like 2?
Yeah, like 2
Maybe
total.
that pass to the tight end in the first quarter, and then they had that I can't even remember the other one.
Like Ricky Pearsall.
The Pearsall got behind the defense. Yeah, got
To
behind
be
the defense.
honest, it was one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. Honestly, they shouldn't have even scored that one touchdown, because that catch that was ruled a catch, it was not a catch. It was a drop. It definitely hit the ground. It was pretty clear to see on replay. If they had called that a drop to begin with, it definitely would have stood or maybe even been confirmed. And they ended up scoring right after that, of course. And then there was a pretty
trash.
Same drive, a super weak PI called to once again extend their drive. I honestly don't believe Florida should have even scored that touchdown. I honestly think that Utah could have held them to 3 points very, very, very realistically without that bad whistle.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, let's go a little bit through these keys. So win the turnover battle, check for Utah. Dominate on the offensive line. I'll give it a partial check because we couldn't do anything in the run. Pass protection, 0 sacks. That's dominating.
Yeah.
And limiting big plays, I'd say we do that. And as far as Florida goes, forcing Utah to pass, not really. Utah's offense wasn't really dynamic, but they didn't really shut anything down per se. Establish the run, definitely didn't do that. That was probably the weakest thing. And protect the QB, they didn't do that either.
Connor, do you have anything you wanted to add? Like you would like to add, like any keys that you thought that Utah hit that we don't have on here?
Well, if you guys watched any football last season, you guys would know that special teams was a huge Achilles heel for Utah, and I thought that Baumeister, our punter, MIP for sure, most improved player by far, 1,000%.
He was amazing.
Yeah, how did he get so good?
I think he probably, I don't know, I have the exact stats in front of me, probably 3 punts inside the 10, like just absolutely outstanding punting from him. And our field goal kick, man, I mean, he missed a 55-yarder, but who's going to hit a 55-yarder consistently?
He hit a 51 too. That was incredible.
He barely missed the 55.
Yeah, exactly. I'm super impressed with our special teams unit. Obviously, there were some miscues. We didn't have a great return game, but I mean, it's game 1. Things like that are going to happen. But I did think that special teams was going to contribute to this game. And I think, I forget the freshman's name, but it was a returner
Mikey
for Florida.
Matthews. Returner for Florida, number 3.
Yeah.
Eugene Wilson.
So he caught the ball on the 5. A great punt, again, by Baumeister. He caught the ball, though, and Utah was able to smother him and down him at, like, the 3-yard line. So just inexperience like that, a freshman returner coming in, not being aware of the situation. But other than that, I think special teams, Utah definitely won things there. I think that was one of my keys to the game. I was looking forward to watching, but yeah.
Yeah, if I could add a retroactive key to the game for Florida, I would have said reduce penalties. I knew they were a fresh unit, but the penalties really hurt them this game. It cost them probably at least a touchdown worth of points with all of those penalties they got.
Yeah, it goes back to like what we talked about, where we definitely underestimated the youth. Like they did not have guys that were ready for the moment. Like those guys were not ready to play a big game. And like maybe by the end of the season that changes, but they weren't ready.
I think that's a testament to how hard it is to play at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's loud, it's hard. They're on top of you all game, especially when you're on that south end zone. The student section is right there, and we saw a lot of trouble for Florida when they're down there. It's really cool to see that like Rice-Eccles hopefully gets some of that respect that they get it needs.
I won't lie. It was funny to me. These Florida players were tweeting "little ass stadium," and they got like 6 false starts.
Yeah, it's like literally because of the sound.
So ironic.
It's like that, and you had a delay of game too. Just you're making all of the classic errors of like.
And it was a delay of game by like 5 seconds, and no one even realized.
Didn't even realize.
It was so far behind.
I don't know. It's just
let's move on to the
comical.
Yeah, let's move on to the position group comparison. I think. Probably bring all the checks up. I'll
just bring everything in.
So let's just go over this pretty quickly. What do you guys think we got right as far as the position group comparison, and what did we miss on?
I think starting at the top, I think QB was correct. Graham Mertz outplayed the composite duo of Barnes and Johnson. I think it didn't translate to a bunch of points, but he passed for 344 yards, I believe, and he overall had a pretty solid game. I don't know. That one's debatable though.
Yeah, running backs for me, I would just give it right in the middle. I don't think anyone's running backs played good. Like, where the hell was Jaquinta Jackson? Like, he barely even played this game. Like, he did nothing. Bernard was pretty good, but I don't think any of the running backs really showed very well, which is pretty surprising because I think we were coming into the game expecting that to be, like, pretty much what happened is the running backs taking over. So I would give that to neither.
Yeah.
Pass catchers. Does anyone have thoughts on pass catchers? We ranked Utah's better than Florida's. What do we think after this game?
I think Ricky Pearsall nailed it, man. He had a great game, especially in the second half. I think that obviously you can cite that Money Parks 80-yard bomb from I think there were a lot of plays in this game where great catches were made. Florida also had that outstanding catch that they made, their only touchdown of the game. I think they were both talented on both ends of the football. I think maybe you would still give the edge to Utah, just because of, well, I don't know. Pittman had a very
Terrible
disappointing drop.
Oh, that was so bad.
And I don't know. I'll probably still give the edge to Utah here, just because I think overall we had more production. But Ricky Pearsall, again, huge shout out to him. He balled, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that Utah's group is better. They have more talent.
Yeah.
But I think that Florida's did better in this specific game just because they passed so much more than we did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, like they're just going to have better stats than Utah's will, just because Utah just with two backup quarterbacks, a third string and a fourth string, you're just not going to throw that much.
Yeah, responding to Tayton Wright, your comment about Vele needing more touches, I think Vele struggles to get open sometimes, and I'm not sure if our game plan really incorporated him a lot. I don't know. I just don't feel
he's
like
not
we
a
ran many plays
separation
for him.
receiver. I've never believed he's a separation receiver. That's his biggest thing is he can't get open. Like his catch radius is pretty good and he's pretty athletic, but the reason I've never been high on Vele is I just don't think he can get open. He just doesn't have that foot speed. He doesn't have the crisp roots like he needs to, where he'll get some plays, but it's just he can't consistently do it against really good corners.
Mhm.
Especially against the speed that Florida's secondary has. It's going to be rough for someone who doesn't have that burst of speed, that quick first step that Devon Bailey doesn't have.
Mhm.
Yeah. O-line, I think we've talked about pretty extensively already. I think firmly in Utah's favor
Utah's
because
was much better.
Florida couldn't pass block or run block, where Utah's could just pass block. So I think that's a pretty clear one that we got right. DBs, I'd also say Utah still.
Yeah,
I
agree.
think Florida's DBs, when they were actually tested, like pretty much didn't make any plays at all, really.
Mhm.
You know, we just didn't throw that much. Whereas
I mean-
Utah's DBs, they were throwing a lot, but we still stopped them quite.
I mean,
Effectively.
shout out to Jason Marshall Jr., man. Gave up his first touchdown of his career.
That's bad.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, we had a
70-yard bomb
comment
first
from a
game.
Florida fan that was talking about how good he was, and it just is
So
hilarious.
Jason
that-
Marshall Jr.'s
he did
locking
it.
you guys
Yeah.
up defensively. You guys are going to get cooked by him. He's never given up a touchdown.
TD.
He's the best player on either of these teams defensively.
First offensive play of the game. It's like a massive TD.
70-yard TD at single coverage, basically.
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
bad.
he literally just couldn't keep up with Money Parks.
Yeah.
Is the funny thing. Like he
He
just
got
wasn't
beat
athletic
straight
enough.
up, dude.
Yeah,
Which is crazy.
like badly too.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to talk about Cole Bishop if we're talking about DBs. I thought Leonard Barton was going to be the best player on defense. Cole Bishop is him. That dude is so good, and I'm early predicting Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. The way he's hitting right now and just his feel for the game is so elite. It reminds me of just the Utah greats we've had in the past, like the Jalen Johnsons. Just, he's him. Cole Bishop has arrived.
Yeah,
I mean, that safety duo of Sione Vaki and Cole Bishop, Kyle Whittingham said throughout fall camp that he'll take those two over any safety duo in the country. And if this game is any indicator on why, I mean, he's not wrong so far.
Mhm.
Sione Vaki in coverage was awesome.
Yeah.
When he was on Ricky Pearsall, he gave Ricky Pearsall
locked him
a
up,
ton of
dude.
trouble. And I think Sione Vaki, he reminds me a lot of like a Marquise Blair type.
Mhm.
He hits so violently. And then Cole Bishop is just everywhere. The dude, I think he had like probably total of 10 tackles tonight. And I loved it. And I think it's something where he came into the game, had an excellent game, kind of bust up his knee a little bit, hurt his knee or his ankle, come back into the game and still is a dynamic force and still was a force to be reckoned with. And it was awesome to see from Cole Bishop.
Okay, let's move on to the front seven. What do you think about the front seven matchup, Connor?
Yeah, I think overall, obviously, I think, well, one thing that I wanted to bring up real quick was Lavani Damuni. Didn't see much action from, or like many highlight reels, I guess, from our LBs. I think Reed got hurt, but obviously held Florida to under 20 rushing yards, so did a great job. But yeah, front seven, was great pressure packages. 5 sacks was obviously putting pressure on Mertz. So yeah, I think Utah takes that one by pretty good landslide there.
Yeah. DeMooney was a little disappointing to me. I feel like he's really kind of like the run stopper back we have, whereas Reed is kind of the coverage guy. And so when Reed went down right away and we were stopping their run, like what role did DeMooney really have? I think we saw a lot of Fotu there, who actually played really amazing. I think
He did play well.
Shout out to Sione Fotu, bro.
Yeah, he played awesome. And so I think he was way better than DeMooney was in this game. But I think DeMooney will have a better matchup probably against Baylor because I don't think they're going to have the same speed Florida had. And DeMooney will be a lot more helpful in that matchup, I think.
Yeah,
I was definitely a little disappointed with DeMooney's foot speed and coverage. Like we're saying, he looks a bit like a bruiser. And I do think we have a lot of depth at that position though. So people like Fotu, Karene Reed's coming back. I think we'll be able to cover that pretty well.
Yeah, and I think a duo of Karene Reed and Demoni, I can't ever say his name, is it's going to be good. Obviously, Karene Reed getting injured, he was concussed at I think like the third, fourth play of the game, really kind of hurt us. But then, like we talked about, Sione Fotu came in and he played an incredible game. He was everywhere and was able to tackle every single person that came in his way.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go take a little victory lap. Let's show our predictions from our episode we did. So I predicted 24-17. Ethan predicted 27-13, and Landon predicted 31-17. So I think we were pretty spot on. I think we saw the matchup pretty clearly what it would be, where Utah would probably be at a talent advantage as far as an experience advantage as far as everywhere but the quarterback. The big question was just Rising. And so, I'm pretty happy with my pick. I think we did pretty well on that.
Yeah, we all nailed the margin of victory pretty spot on. It's hard to predict our defense was going to be that good. But, dude, the margin of victory, super close for all of us.
Yep. Somebody cooked in here, that's for sure.
Somebody did cook. And that actually takes us for week 1 of college football. For the first game here, we are all 1-0 with our picks, and Let's Talk Sports is 1-0 against the spread as well, because we did pick Utah to cover.
We did pick Utah to cover. We did. So, yeah. Well, I think that we can all say this was a really, really positive first game. Baylor next week is going to be super interesting because I think they're less talented than Florida is, but it's also on the road. So who knows how that's going to play. But we'll talk about that later. But anyways, thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast, comment, tell us what you thought about the game, and we love responding to your comments.
A shout out to Connor coming joining us on tonight.
Yeah, huge
special thanks to special guest Connor.
Happy to be here.